This is Dvar Torah on Parshat Toledot that I offered yesterday, November 26th, 2022, at the Chevra Mishnayes Congregation in Winnipeg. The Parsha begins, Ve'ele Toldot Yitzchak. These are the Toldot of Isaac. And this word Toldot is translated as generations or the story of. I would translate it playfully as the aging of Isaac, because that's a lot of what this Parsha is about. And for some reason, it's something I relate to. At the beginning of this Parsha, Isaac is young and happy. He's 40 years old, but we have to remember people lived much longer in his time. So I would say he's in his 20s in Isaac years. The Parsha emphasizes that he's the son of Abraham. That is his legacy to protect and to carry on. And he's just married Rebekah. And we know from the end of the last Parsha that he loves her. Now they're together for 20 years. And Rebekah's biological clock is ticking. So Isaac prays for her to become pregnant. And he is the right person to offer this kind of a prayer, because Isaac is unusually close to God. He's the only one of our patriarchs to be given a name by God before he's even born, and live with that God-given name all his life. He's been offered to God as a sacrifice. And our tradition is very clear that Isaac participated in the Akedah freely and wholeheartedly. He had the opportunity to offer himself completely to God, and he did. And when we see him again in the Torah just before meeting Rebekah, he's out in the field meditating. So this is a holy person, and his prayer is powerful. Our rabbis tell us in the Midrash that Rebekah was destined to be childless all her life, and Isaac's prayer overturned her destiny. So now Isaac has twins. His prayer was that powerful. She not only becomes pregnant, but has twins. And he particularly loves one of these two sons, the older twin, Esau. And that has something to do with Esau as he grows up, becoming a skillful hunter with a bow and arrow, like Isaac's brother Ishmael. From everything the Torah tells us, Isaac and Ishmael were close. And I imagine that Isaac looked up to his big brother and was delighted to have a son who was growing up like him. And now the family faces a challenge. There's a famine in the land, and they relocate into the territory of the Philistines. And Isaac sees God, and God reminds him to stay in the land, in Eretz Israel. And this is very important, and it's part of Isaac's holiness. He's the only one of our patriarchs and matriarchs to be born in the promised land and live his whole life there without ever leaving. At this point in the story, while they're in the Philistine district, Isaac and Rebekah are pretending for safety's sake to be brother and sister. This worked well for Abraham and Sarah before them. And lo and behold, the Philistine king looks out the window and sees Isaac and Rebekah fooling around, which is one of the meanings of Isaac's name. He's named Yitzchak, and he is mitzachek with Rebekah. And the king realizes that this is not a brother and sister. And we realize that after decades together with grown kids, Isaac and Rebekah's marriage is still sexy. Not only is there love there, but that spark has not diminished. And at this point, Isaac begins to become very prosperous. He's a cattleman and sheep herder like his father, but he also tries his hand at farming. He sows seed and he harvests 100-fold. And before you know it, with the herders and the hired hands and the servants and their families, Isaac's extended family has become a whole tribe, and he is the chief, the patriarch. And now when he speaks as we. So now Isaac has an exalted spiritual life, a happy, romantic, and sexy marriage, 2 sons that he's proud of, one of them that he's especially close to, great prosperity, a community, leadership, and all of this has gone by in just a few paragraphs, barely up to the beginning of the 3rd Aliyah. Because really, this Parsha is from the point of view of older Isaac, looking back on his younger years and thinking, it went by so quickly. And now the troubles begin. The Philistines are envious of the prosperity of Isaac's tribe and tell them to move on. And they do, but the borders are not clear. Previous agreements with Abraham have not been kept. There's constant conflict over the water supply. Isaac handles all this diplomatically and peacefully, but you can hear the relief in his voice when it finally seems like they're in an area where the land is wide open before them. And you can hear his bitterness when he says to the Philistines, "You hated me and sent me away from you." Also at this time, Isaac has reason to be disappointed with his spiritual life. God appears to him twice in connection with this sojourn among the Philistines. And each time, God says, "I am with you, I will bless you because of your father Abraham." Now, maybe Isaac is beyond all ego, but if I were him, I would say, "God, again with Abraham? What am I, chopped liver?" And along with that letdown come family troubles. They begin with a well-meaning gesture. Esau, who is a very devoted son, has reached the age that Isaac was when he got married. And Esau apparently feels that he should emulate his father and get married at that age too. But he makes a bad marriage. He marries 2 Hittite women, not part of the Abrahamic family. And they are a bitterness of spirit. to Isaac and Rebekah. I think part of that bitterness is that Isaac and Rebekah are monogamous. They're the only monogamous couple among our patriarchs and matriarchs, and they would have wanted each of their sons to be happy with one wife, but it was not to be. And now Isaac's aging body begins to fail him, and his eyes dim, and he goes blind. And although we see in the story that his other senses are all very sharp, and although we know that he's going to live for many more years, Isaac feels that death is no longer far away. And he gathers all his strength, physical and spiritual, to give a powerful blessing to his favorite son, Esau, the blessing of prosperity and power. And at that point, everything falls apart. Being blind might not be so bad if you're surrounded by people who care for you and take care of you. And that's how Isaac must have felt. But now his wife, Rebekah, takes advantage of his blindness to manipulate him and deceive him. His younger son, Jacob, takes advantage of his blindness to fool and trick him and steals the blessing that should have gone to Esau. And the trust in this family is broken. Our rabbis point out in the Midrash that Isaac is the first person in the Torah to suffer from aging. And they're talking specifically about his blindness. He's a mirror for us of the decline of our bodies as we get older. But we can also see him as a mirror of all the failures, disappointments, letdowns, heartaches that come to many of us as we age. Isaac, during the Akedah, when he was bound as a sacrifice, didn't flinch. Now, at this moment, when the blessing he meant to give to Esau is stolen, Isaac trembles. If we see in him a mirror of our own heartaches, can we also see him as some kind of model of how to live on through them? I think we can. Because Isaac begins right away to pick up the pieces and do what he can. Even though things no longer seem wide open, but now very limited, he can still give blessings. At first, it seems to him that he does not have another blessing to give to Esau, who is weeping and raging, but then he manages it. Isaac gives Esau the blessing. It's very short. It does not mention God, because I think at this moment that connection is broken. But it is a blessing, and it does balance things a little bit. And soon after, we see Isaac saying farewell to Jacob and instructing him to go and find a wife from Rebekah's family. And we see that Isaac has resigned himself to Jacob's preeminence in the family. It's not what he would have wanted. But our rabbis tell us that he's realized it's what Rebekah wants, and he knows how wise she is. And Isaac resigns himself to this. And in that resignation, he gives Jacob, Isaac gives to Jacob a beautiful blessing, calling on God and passing on to Jacob the legacy of Abraham. And the end of the Parsha is a gesture from Esau of trying to make things right. Esau has finally realized that his parents are unhappy with his marriage. He doesn't divorce his wives, which might be what Isaac and Rebekah would have preferred, but he does marry again, a daughter of his uncle Ishmael. And partial as that gesture is, I think that Isaac, who loved Ishmael, must have been somewhat comforted by it. And that's the end of the Parsha. After that, the Torah does not tell us a whole lot about Isaac, but there is enough that we can at least hope that other ancient books are right when they say that he and Rebekah had a contented old age. We know that Jacob comes home with children while Isaac is still alive. We know that Jacob and Esau are reconciled in his lifetime. And the Torah tells us that he lived to be 180, 10 times chai. So a number of a fullness of life, a life full of life. So may all of us who experience decline and disappointment and heartache like Isaac, be able, like Isaac, to do what we still can, to continue to bring blessings into the world and to live lives full of life.